Picture this: a storm rages over Chicago, the kind that makes the city feel like it's holding its breath. Rain hammers the streets, and in the midst of it, a man in a sleek limousine stares out at the chaos. He's Michael Lancaster, a billionaire who's built an empire of luxury hotels, a man who commands boardrooms and bends markets to his will. His life is a fortress of wealth, polished to a shine, but tonight, something's off. His jaw is tight, his fingers drumming on the leather armrest. A folder, vital to his next acquisition, is missing, and the weight of that loss gnaws at him. But what he doesn't know, what he can't possibly imagine, is that this storm is about to deliver something far more disruptive than a lost document. It's about to bring him face to face with a woman who will unravel everything he thought he knew about himself. Let's pull you into this moment. The rain is relentless, blurring the world outside Michael's tinted windows. His driver, James, is navigating the flooded streets, the wipers slashing through sheets of water. Michael's mind is elsewhere, replaying the day's meetings, the sharp edges of his ambition cutting through any softness he might have once had. He's 38, at the peak of his power, but there's a hollowness he doesn't name. The city lights flicker like distant stars, and just as he's about to call his assistant to track down that folder, James slows the car. "Sir," he says, voice tight, "there's someone out there." Michael squints through the rain. A figure lies crumpled on the roadside, barely visible in the downpour. A woman, soaked to the bone, her body curled protectively around something clutched to her chest. Against every instinct, against the cold logic that's guided his life, Michael acts. He's out of the car before James can protest, the rain soaking his tailored suit in seconds. He kneels beside her, heart pounding, and sees her face, pale, lips trembling, but somehow fierce, even in unconsciousness. In her hands, gripped like a lifeline, is his folder, the one he's been tearing the city apart to find. Who is she? Why would she risk this storm for papers that mean nothing to her? He lifts her carefully, her weight slight against his frame, and with James's help, they get her into the limo. The folder stays in her grasp, her fingers locked around it even as her body shivers. Michael's mind races. Protocol says call an ambulance, keep his distance, protect his image. But something in her face, a quiet defiance, pulls him past reason. He tells James to drive to his estate, not a hospital. This choice, this single moment, is the crack in his carefully built world. They arrive at his sprawling mansion, the kind of place that feels more like a museum than a home. The staff scrambles as Michael carries her inside, her wet clothes dripping on marble floors. He lays her in a guest suite, the firelight casting shadows across her face. She's young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair plastered to her skin and a faint scar above her brow that he can't stop noticing. A doctor is called, discreet and well-paid, who confirms she's exhausted, hypothermic, but stable. Michael stands by the window, watching the storm rage on, the folder now on a table nearby. He opens it, expecting answers, but finds only numbers, contracts, the cold language of his empire. The real mystery is her. Why did she have it? What drove her into that storm? Hours pass, and she stirs. Her eyes flutter open, and when they meet his, there's a spark of recognition that jolts him. "You're Michael Lancaster," she whispers, her voice hoarse but steady. He nods, caught off guard by the way she says his name, not with awe, but with something heavier, like she's carried it for years. "And you are?" he asks, leaning closer. She hesitates, her gaze flickering to the folder. "Elena," she says simply, no last name, no explanation. She sits up slowly, wincing, and he notices her hands, calloused, not the hands of someone who lives in his world. "I found your folder," she continues, outside the Wilcott Hotel. "I was trying to return it." The Wilcott, his latest acquisition, a historic building he's planning to gut for profit. But her story doesn't add up. The hotel is miles from where he found her, and no one braves a storm like that for a stranger's papers. He presses her, his voice sharp but curious. "Why risk it? You could have died out there." Elena's eyes darken, and for a moment, she looks like she's weighing whether to trust him. Because it mattered to someone, she says finally, her words cutting through the room's warmth. And because I know what it's like to lose something you can't replace. There's a weight to her voice, a story she's not telling, and it lodges in Michael's chest like a splinter. He wants to push, to demand answers, but something stops him. Maybe it's the way she holds herself, like she's faced worse storms than this one. Maybe it's the way her words echo a truth he spent years burying, that some losses cut deeper than money or power. The fire crackles, and the silence stretches. Michael's life has been about control, about knowing every variable, but Elena is a variable he can't solve. She's not intimidated by his wealth, not dazzled by the mansion or his name. Instead, she looks at him like she sees something he's forgotten, a man, not a mogul. He offers her dry clothes, food, a place to stay until the storm passes, expecting gratitude or at least compliance. But Elena shakes her head. I need to go, she says, standing despite her obvious exhaustion. There's someone waiting for me. The way she says it, with quiet urgency, makes Michael pause. A husband? A child? He doesn't ask, but the question burns. He insists she stay, his tone softer than he intends, and after a long moment, she relents, sinking back onto the bed. As she rests, Michael steps into the hall, the folder in his hands. He should feel relieved, it's back, his plans are intact. But instead, he's restless, pacing the corridors of a house that's never felt like his. Elena's words keep circling in his mind, I know what it's like to lose something you can't replace. He's lost things, deals, allies, even his parents years ago, but he's never let himself feel it. Not like she does. He glances back at the guest suite, the door slightly ajar, and wonders what she's lost, what drove her into that storm. The answer feels close, like a shadow just out of sight, and it unsettles him in a way he can't shake. Outside, the rain begins to ease, the first hint of dawn breaking through the clouds. Michael stands at the window, his reflection faint against the glass. He's built a life where nothing touches him, where every problem has a price tag. But Elena, with her scarred hands and guarded eyes, has slipped through his defenses. She's a stranger, yet her presence feels like a challenge, a mirror held up to the emptiness he's ignored for years. He doesn't know it yet, but this night, this storm, has set something in motion. It's not just about a folder anymore. It's about a woman who's about to turn his world upside down, and a truth that will force him to confront the man he's become. What happens next isn't what you'd expect. It's not a simple thank you or a quick goodbye. Elena's story, her reason for being out there, is about to unravel in ways that will leave Michael questioning everything, his choices, his empire, his heart. And when the truth comes, it won't just shake him. It'll break him open, like the storm that brought her to his door. Stick with me, because this is only the beginning, and the pieces of this puzzle are about to fall into place in ways that will leave you breathless. Let's step back, way back, to a night 6 years before that storm, when the Chicago sky was clear and the city hummed with possibility. Michael Lancaster wasn't yet the untouchable billionaire he'd become. At 32, he was still climbing, sharp-edged and hungry, his name just starting to carry weight in the city's elite circles. His life was a series of calculated moves, boardrooms, handshakes, late nights poring over contracts. But on this night, he was somewhere he didn't want to be, a wedding reception for his cousin, dragged there by family obligation, the kind of event that made his skin crawl with its forced smiles and small talk. The venue was a grand hotel, all chandeliers and champagne, but Michael felt out of place, his mind already on the next deal, the next step up. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but Michael stood apart, nursing a drink by a window overlooking the city. He was used to being watched, his tailored suit, his quiet intensity drew eyes, but he didn't care for the attention. He was there to show his face, nothing more. That's when he saw her. She was a server, moving through the crowd with a tray of drinks, her dark hair pulled back, her movements quick but careful. She wasn't like the other staff, who seemed to fade into the background. There was something about her, a steadiness, a focus, that caught his eye. She wasn't beautiful in the polished way of the women who usually circled him, but her face held a kind of quiet strength, like she'd seen hard days and kept going. He didn't think much of it at first. Just a passing glance. But then it happened. A guest, too deep in champagne, stumbled into her, and her tray tipped. Glasses shattered, wine splashed across the floor, and the room's chatter faltered. Heads turned, and Michael saw the flush creep up her neck, the way her jaw tightened as she dropped to her knees to clean up the mess. The guest laughed, dismissive, and the other servers hesitated, unsure how to help. Michael didn't know why he moved. He wasn't the type to get involved, to draw attention to himself in a room full of people he barely tolerated. But before he realized it, he was kneeling beside her, picking up shards of glass, his hands brushing close to hers. She looked up, startled, her eyes meeting his. They were hazel, flecked with gold, and for a moment, he forgot the room, the noise, the deal waiting for him tomorrow. "You don't have to," she said softly, her voice low, almost lost in the hum of the crowd. "I do what I want," he replied, sharper than he meant, but there was a flicker of a smile on her lips, like she saw through his brusqueness. They worked in silence, gathering the broken pieces, and when they stood, she thanked him, her voice steady but warm. "Not many people would have done that," she said, and he shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "It's just glass," he muttered, but her eyes lingered on him, like she saw something he didn't. Her name tag read Elena, and he caught himself glancing at it as she walked away, her tray empty now, her posture straight despite the embarrassment. The rest of the night, he found himself watching her, noticing the way she moved, never rushing, never faltering, even when the guests were demanding or the hours dragged on. She wasn't performing for anyone, wasn't trying to charm or impress. She was just there, doing her job, and yet she stood out in a way that unsettled him. Michael wasn't a man who got distracted, but Elena was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Later, as the reception wound down, he stepped outside for air, the summer night warm and heavy. She was there, near the service entrance, sitting on a crate, her apron off, rubbing her neck like the weight of the night was finally hitting her. He should have kept walking, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned against the wall nearby, lighting a cigarette he rarely smoked, just to have something to do. "Long night?" he asked, surprising himself. She glanced over, not startled, just curious. "They're all long," she said, her voice carrying a hint of a laugh, like she was used to it. He nodded, and for a moment, they just stood there, the city's pulse mixing with the quiet between them. He didn't know why he kept talking. Maybe it was the way she didn't fawn over him, didn't ask who he was or what he did. She treated him like a person, not a name. They talked about nothing, her favorite diner in the city, the way the lake looked at dawn, the music she listened to when she needed to think. It was easy, too easy, and when she mentioned she was saving up to open her own place someday, a little restaurant, he felt a pang he couldn't name. "You'll get there," he said, and she smiled, not dreamy, but determined. "I have to," she replied, and the way she said it, like it was a promise to herself, stuck with him. Before he left, she stood, brushing off her skirt. "Thanks for the company," she said, and he nodded, feeling like he should say something more but not knowing what. As she turned to go, a button from his cuff caught on her sleeve, popping off and rolling into the shadows. She laughed, picking it up, and handed it back to him. Her fingers brushed his, and the contact sent a jolt through him, small but undeniable. "Keep it," he said, half joking, and she tucked it into her pocket with a grin. "Maybe I will," she teased, and then she was gone, back into the chaos of the kitchen, leaving him alone with the city lights and a feeling he couldn't shake. That night, as he drove home, her face lingered in his mind, her smile, her voice, the way she carried herself like she was stronger than the world around her. He told himself it was nothing, just a moment, a fleeting connection in a life that didn't have room for distractions. But deep down, he knew it was more. He didn't know her last name, didn't have her number, didn't even know if he'd see her again. And yet, that night, that one small encounter, planted a seed he'd spend years ignoring, a seed that would grow into something he couldn't outrun. Because Elena wasn't just a server, and that night wasn't just a chance meeting. It was the beginning of a story that would bring him to his knees, and he had no idea how close he was to losing everything. Let's slip into Elena's world, 6 years ago, just days after that fleeting encounter with Michael at the wedding reception. The Chicago night is cool, the kind that makes you pull your jacket tighter as you hurry through the streets. Elena's life is a far cry from the glittering hotel where she crossed paths with a man whose name she didn't yet know would haunt her. She's 23, living in a cramped apartment in a neighborhood where the streetlights flicker and the walls are thin enough to hear her neighbors' arguments. The air smells of fried food and exhaust, and her place is a single room with a sagging mattress, a hot plate, and a small table cluttered with bills and a worn notebook where she sketches ideas for her dream restaurant. It's not much, but it's hers, a fragile foothold in a city that feels too big sometimes. Elena's days are a grind. She works 2 jobs, mornings at a diner, evenings as a server for catering gigs like the wedding where she met Michael. Her hands are rough from scrubbing dishes, her feet ache from hours on her feet, but she moves through it with a quiet determination. She's not one to complain, she learned early that life doesn't hand out favors. Raised by a single mother who passed 2 years ago, Elena's used to carrying the weight alone. Her mom's voice still echoes in her head, "Keep going, Mija," no matter what, that's what she does, every day, even when the exhaustion feels like it's seeping into her bones. Tonight, she's home after a late shift, her apron tossed on the chair, her body slumping onto the mattress. The room is dark except for the glow of a street lamp sneaking through the blinds. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out the button, the one from Michael's cuff, the one she kept as a joke but now holds like a talisman. It's small, silver, nothing special, but it feels like a piece of that night, a night when someone saw her, really saw her, not just the server in the background. She turns it over in her fingers, her mind drifting to his face, sharp jaw, guarded eyes, the way he knelt to help her without a second thought. She doesn't know who he is, not really, just a man in a suit who was kind for a moment. But that moment lingers, a spark in the gray of her days. She sets the button on the table and opens her notebook, flipping to a page where she's scribbled notes for her restaurant. It's a dream she's nursed since she was a kid, watching her mom cook for neighbors, turning simple ingredients into plates that brought people together. Elena wants a place like that, warm, welcoming, where no one feels small. She writes down a new idea, a dessert inspired by the wedding's wine, a nod to that night. It's silly, she tells herself, tying a stranger to her plans, but it makes her smile, and smiles are rare these days. She closes the notebook and lies back, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if she'll ever see him again. The city hums outside, indifferent, and she drifts to sleep, the button glinting faintly in the dark. The next morning, she's up before dawn, pulling on her diner uniform. The place is a greasy spoon, all chipped mugs and sticky counters, but the regulars are kind, and the tips are enough to keep her afloat. She moves through her shift, pouring coffee, dodging the cook's bad jokes, chatting with an old man who always orders pancakes. But her mind keeps slipping back to the wedding, to the way Michael's voice sounded, low and sure, when he said he did what he wanted. There was something in it, a hint of defiance, like he was fighting something she couldn't see. She shakes it off, focusing on the orders, but the memory clings, stubborn and warm. After her shift, she heads to the library, a rare free hour before her next job. It's her refuge, a place where the world quiets down. She's there to research small business loans, anything to inch closer to her restaurant dream, but she finds herself flipping through a magazine instead, one with a feature on Chicago's rising stars. And there he is. Michael Lancaster, the name in bold, his face staring back from a glossy page. She freezes, her breath catching. The article calls him a hotel heir, a ruthless dealmaker, someone who's turning old properties into gold. There's no mention of kindness, no hint of the man who picked up glass for a stranger. She reads it twice, her heart sinking a little. He's not just out of her league, he's in a different world. She tears out the page, folding it carefully, though she's not sure why. Maybe it's proof that night happened, that it wasn't just a dream. Back at her apartment, she tucks it into her notebook, next to the button. She tells herself to let it go, that people like him don't remember people like her. But there's a part of her, small and stubborn, that holds on to the memory, that believes in the way he looked at her, like she was more than her circumstances. It's a dangerous hope, one she buries under the weight of her days, but it's there, flickering like a candle she can't bring herself to blow out. As the weeks pass, Elena's life grinds on. She picks up extra shifts, saves every penny, and keeps sketching her restaurant plans. The button stays on her table, the magazine page in her notebook, small anchors to a night that feels further away with each passing day. She doesn't know that Michael's life is moving in parallel, that he's climbing higher, growing colder, building walls she'll one day crash through. She doesn't know that the city, vast and unyielding, will pull them apart only to throw them back together in a storm that will change everything. All she knows is the ache in her chest, the dream she's chasing, and the faint, foolish hope that somewhere out there, a man with guarded eyes might remember her name. And that hope, fragile as it is, keeps her moving forward, step by weary step, toward a future she can't yet see. Let's drift back to the present, 6 years after that fleeting night at the wedding, just days after the storm that brought Elena crashing into Michael's world. The Chicago morning is gray, the air heavy with the aftermath of rain. Elena is back in her life, but it's not the same life she had at 23. She's 29 now, living in a slightly better apartment, though the walls still creak and the faucet drips. The room is small, cluttered with a toddler's toys and a stack of recipe books, but there's warmth here, a tiny potted plant on the windowsill, a drawing taped to the fridge. Elena's world has shifted since that night with Michael, not because of wealth or chance, but because of the child asleep in the next room, a 3-year-old boy named Ethan, whose laughter is her anchor and her ache. She's up early, moving quietly so as not to wake him. Her hands, still calloused, tie her hair back as she prepares for work. She's no longer a server, she's a manager at a small bakery, a step closer to her restaurant dream, though the hours are long and the pay barely covers rent. The storm is still fresh in her mind, her reckless trek to return Michael's folder, the way he carried her into his mansion, the weight of his gaze when she said his name. She hasn't told anyone about it, not her coworkers, not the neighbor who watches Ethan. It feels too big, too unreal, like a secret she's not ready to share. But it's there, stirring something she thought she'd buried. As she packs Ethan's lunch, her eyes catch on a small box on the counter. Inside is the button from Michael's cuff, the one she kept all these years, and next to it, the folded magazine page with his face. She hasn't looked at them in months, but since the storm, she's pulled them out twice, tracing the edges like they might hold answers. She doesn't know why she kept them, why she still feels a pull toward a man who's a stranger in every way that matters. But when she saw him that night, his suit soaked, his voice soft with concern, it wasn't the billionaire from the headlines. It was the man who knelt beside her 6 years ago, who saw her when no one else did. She shakes her head, shoving the box away. There's no time for this. Ethan stirs, his small voice calling for her, and she scoops him up, his warmth grounding her. He's got her hazel eyes, but there's something else in his face, a sharpness she can't place, one that makes her heart twist. She kisses his forehead, hurrying to get him ready for daycare. At the bakery, the day is a blur, kneading dough, ringing up customers, soothing a fussy delivery driver. But in quiet moments, her mind drifts to Michael's mansion, to the way he looked at her, like he was searching for something. She wonders if he remembered her, if that night at the wedding ever crossed his mind. The thought is foolish, but it lingers, stubborn and heavy. That afternoon, a delivery order comes in, a big one, for a corporate event at Lancaster Corp, Michael's company. Elena's stomach lurches. She doesn't usually handle deliveries, but the driver's short-staffed, and she volunteers before she can overthink it. The building is a glass monolith, all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces, a world so far from hers it feels like stepping onto another planet. She carries the boxes of pastries to the top floor, her heart pounding as she steps into a sleek conference room. And there he is. Michael, standing at the head of a table, mid-sentence, his presence commanding the room. He's sharper now, his suit impeccable, his eyes harder than she remembers, but it's him. She sets the boxes down, keeping her head low, her hands trembling slightly. The room hums with executives, but she feels his gaze before she sees it. When she looks up, their eyes meet, and for a moment, the world narrows to just them. His brow furrows, like he's trying to place her, and she feels exposed, like he might see everything, her past, her struggles, the boy waiting for her at home. "Thank you," he says, his voice clipped but polite, and she nods, murmuring a response before turning to leave. But as she hands him the receipt, their fingers brush, and she feels that same jolt from 6 years ago, the one that made her keep his button. His hand lingers a fraction too long, and she wonders if he feels it too. Back at the bakery, she's distracted, replaying the moment. Did he recognize her? Did he even care? She's not sure what she expected, some grand reunion, a spark of memory. The idea feels childish now, but it stings. That night, as she tucks Ethan into bed, he asks, "Mama, who's my daddy?" It's a question he's asked before, one she dodges with stories about a brave man far away. But tonight, it hits harder. She kisses his forehead, her throat tight, and whispers, "Someone who'd love you if he knew you." The words feel like a betrayal, to Ethan, to herself, to the man she barely knows but can't forget. Later, alone, she pulls out the magazine page again. Michael's face stares back, all power and distance, but she remembers his hands in the storm, gentle as they carried her. She thinks of the button, of the way he said her name that night, like it mattered. There's a knock at the door, her neighbor, returning a toy Ethan left behind. "You okay?" the woman asks, seeing Elena's face. "Yeah," Elena lies, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But as she closes the door, she feels it, a shift, like the city itself is conspiring to pull her back to him. She doesn't know that Michael, miles away, is staring at a glass of whiskey, his mind on a woman he can't place, a memory that won't let go. They're closer than they think, and the truth, when it comes, will be a reckoning neither is ready for. The Chicago skyline glitters under a late afternoon sun, but inside the towering glass fortress of Lancaster Corp., the air is charged with something heavier than the usual corporate hum. It's been a week since Elena delivered pastries to Michael's office, since their eyes locked and her world tilted just enough to unsettle her. She's tried to push it down, to focus on Ethan, on the bakery, on the dream that keeps her moving. But Michael's face, his sharp jaw, his searching gaze, keep slipping into her thoughts, like a song she can't stop humming. Today, she's back in his world, not by choice but by necessity. The bakery's owner, thrilled by the corporate order, has assigned Elena to oversee a new contract with Lancaster Corp., a chance to supply their events regularly. She's here to finalize the details, her heart a knot of nerves as she steps into the elevator, the city shrinking below her. The conference room is sleek, all polished wood and floor-to-ceiling windows, a stark contrast to the flour-dusted chaos of her bakery. Michael is there, standing by a whiteboard, his sleeves rolled up, a rare glimpse of the man beneath the suit. He's mid-conversation with a team of executives, his voice low and commanding, but when Elena enters, carrying a folder of proposals, he pauses. Their eyes meet again, and this time, there's no mistaking it, he's looking at her, not through her. She feels the weight of it, like a hand pressing on her chest, but she forces herself to move, setting the folder on the table with a steady hand she doesn't feel. "Good afternoon, Mr. Lancaster," she says, her voice professional, though it wavers just slightly. He nods, his expression unreadable, but his eyes don't leave her. The meeting begins, a blur of numbers and logistics. Elena presents the bakery's offerings, her words practiced but her mind elsewhere. She's hyper-aware of Michael, sitting at the head of the table, his fingers tapping lightly on a pen. He asks questions, sharp, precise, but there's a softness in his tone when he addresses her, one the others don't seem to notice. She answers, keeping her gaze on the papers, but every so often, their eyes catch, and it's like the room shrinks, the voices fading to a hum. She wonders if he's remembering the storm, the way he carried her, or if he's still trying to place her, a stranger who feels like a memory. As the meeting wraps up, Michael asks her to stay, saying he needs to clarify a detail. The others file out, leaving them alone, the silence thick with unspoken questions. He stands, moving to the window, his back to her for a moment. "You're good at this," he says, turning to face her, his voice quieter now, less guarded. "The bakery, it's yours." She shakes her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Not yet. I'm just the manager, but I'm working on it." There's pride in her voice, and he nods, like he sees it, like it matters. The moment feels fragile, like a thread stretched too tight, and she's not sure whether to pull or let it snap. He steps closer, picking up a sample pastry from the table, a small tart she'd made herself. "This is familiar," he says, almost to himself, and her breath catches. It's the same recipe she'd tweaked after the wedding, inspired by the wine that spilled that night. She doesn't say it, but her silence seems to draw his attention. He looks at her, really looks, and she feels exposed, like he's seeing the girl she was 6 years ago, the one who kept his button like a secret. "Have we met before?" he asks, his voice low, testing the waters. Her heart pounds, but she shakes her head, the lie bitter on her tongue. "I don't think so," she says, her eyes dropping to the floor. She's not ready for this, not ready to unravel the past in a room that feels too big for truths. He doesn't push, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes, doubt, maybe, or recognition. He hands her the tart, their fingers brushing, and the contact sends a shiver through her, sharp and unwelcome. She pulls back, clutching the folder like a shield. "I should go," she says, her voice steadier than she feels. He nods, but as she turns, he says, "Elena." Just her name, nothing more, but the way he says it, like he's tasting it, stops her. She glances back, and for a moment, they're not a billionaire and a baker. They're just two people, caught in a memory neither can name. "Thank you," he adds, and she nods, slipping out before the moment can pull her under. Back at her apartment, the evening is quiet, Ethan already asleep. Elena sits at her table, the button and magazine page in front of her again. She's angry at herself, at the way her heart raced, at the lie she told. Why didn't she say something? Why does it still matter? She thinks of Ethan, of the questions he asks about his father, and her chest tightens. Michael doesn't know, couldn't know, and she's not sure she wants him to. But that moment in the conference room, the way he said her name, it's cracked something open, a hope she thought she'd buried. She picks up the button, rolling it between her fingers, and remembers his voice from 6 years ago, the way he said, "Keep it," like it was a promise. Outside, the city hums, indifferent to her turmoil. She doesn't know that Michael is still in his office, the tart uneaten on his desk, his mind turning over her face, her voice, the way she moved like someone he'd known forever. He's not sure why it matters, why he can't let it go, but he feels it, a pull, a thread tying him to her, one he's not ready to cut. They're circling each other, drawn by a past neither fully understands, and the truth, when it breaks, will be a storm of its own, one that will shake them both to their core. The Chicago air is crisp, carrying the first bite of autumn as Elena steps into the Lancaster Corp building once more. It's been days since the conference room meeting, since Michael's voice wrapped around her name like a question she wasn't ready to answer. The bakery's contract with his company is now official, and her boss, thrilled with the deal, has tasked her with overseeing the first major delivery, a gala for Lancaster's latest hotel opening. It's a chance to prove herself, but it also means working closely with Michael's team, maybe even Michael himself. Her stomach twists at the thought, a mix of dread and something she won't name, something that feels dangerously like hope. The gala is being planned in a sleek office suite, all glass walls and minimalist decor, a world that feels like it belongs to Michael. Elena arrives early, her arms full of sample menus and dessert sketches, her hair pulled back but a few strands escaping, framing her tired eyes. She's been up late with Ethan, who's been fussy with a cold, and the weight of single motherhood presses on her shoulders. But she straightens, forcing a professional smile as she's ushered into a meeting room where Michael's team is already gathered. He's there, standing by a window, his silhouette sharp against the city's glow. He turns as she enters, and their eyes meet, a silent jolt passing between them. "Ms. Reyes," he says, his voice formal but warm, and she nods, her heart skipping at the sound of her last name, one she hadn't shared with him. The meeting is a whirlwind of details, guest lists, flavor profiles, presentation styles. Elena speaks confidently, her passion for her craft shining through as she describes the desserts she's planned, each one a nod to the city's history. Michael listens, his gaze steady, and she feels it like a physical touch, making her words falter once or twice. He asks questions, not just to fill the silence but to draw her out, and she answers, careful to keep her distance, to stay the professional he expects. But there's a moment, when she passes him a sketch of a tart inspired by the hotel's architecture, that their hands brush. It's brief, but his fingers linger, and she pulls back, her breath catching. He doesn't comment, but his eyes flicker with something, curiosity, maybe, or recognition. As the meeting ends, Michael asks her to stay, saying he wants her input on the gala's dessert table layout. The others leave, and the room feels too quiet, the city's hum muffled by the glass. He gestures to a table where a mock-up of the gala setup is displayed, and they stand side by side, closer than they've been since the storm. She points out adjustments, her voice steady, but her pulse races. He's watching her, not the table, and she feels it, the weight of his attention. "You're good at this," he says again, like he did last time, but now there's a question in it, like he's trying to piece her together. "It's just practice," she replies, her eyes on the table, but her voice betrays a hint of pride. Then it happens. As she adjusts a model of a dessert stand, a thin red cord bracelet slips from her wrist, falling to the floor. It's old, frayed, a simple thing she's worn for years, tied there by a man she met in a rain-soaked night she's never forgotten. Michael bends to pick it up before she can, his fingers closing around it. He freezes, his face shifting, like a memory has slammed into him. "Where did you get this?" he asks, his voice low, almost urgent. She looks at him, startled, and sees something in his eyes, shock, maybe pain. "It's just something I've had," she says, her voice faltering, but he's not convinced. He turns the bracelet over, his thumb tracing the knots, and she knows he remembers. She knows because she's seen that look before, 6 years ago, when he tied it on her wrist under a dripping awning, promising to find her again. The air feels thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Elena," he says, and this time her name is a plea, a question, a confession. She steps back, her heart pounding, her mind screaming to run from this, from him, from the truth that's too close now. "I should go," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, but he's still holding the bracelet, his eyes locked on hers. "You were there," he says, not a question, a realization. That night, the rain, the hotel, his voice cracks, and she feels her own resolve crumbling. She wants to deny it, to keep the wall between them, but his face, open, raw, unguarded, stops her. "I have to go," she repeats, turning for the door, but his voice follows her. "Please," he says, and it's the first time she's heard him sound like that, like a man who's lost something he can't name. She leaves, her steps quick, her breath uneven. The elevator ride is a blur, the city outside a smear of light and shadow. Back at her apartment, Ethan is asleep, his small chest rising and falling. She sits by his bed, the bracelet still in her mind, Michael's voice echoing. She pulls out the button, the magazine page, the relics of a night that's haunted her for years. She's angry, at herself for wearing the bracelet, at him for remembering, at the world for pulling them together only to tear them apart. But beneath the anger is something else, a longing she's fought so hard to bury. She doesn't know that Michael is still in his office, the bracelet on his desk, his hands clenched as he replays that night, the promises he made, the girl he let slip away. They're so close to the truth now, so close to the collision that will shatter everything, and neither of them is ready for what comes next. The Chicago night is heavy, the city's lights muted by a low-hanging fog that clings to the streets. Inside Michael Lancaster's penthouse office, the world feels even heavier. It's late, hours after Elena fled the gala planning meeting, leaving behind the red cord bracelet and a truth that's clawing its way to the surface. Michael sits at his desk, the bracelet in front of him, its frayed knots a silent accusation. The room is dark except for a single lamp, casting long shadows across the glass and steel that define his life. He hasn't moved in what feels like hours, his mind caught in a loop, Elena's face, her voice, the night 6 years ago when he tied that bracelet on her wrist under a rain-soaked awning. He'd promised to find her, to come back, but he hadn't. And now, she's here, in his world, and he's starting to realize what he's missed. He picks up the bracelet, his fingers tracing the knots, each one a memory he's buried under years of ambition. That night wasn't just a chance encounter, it was a moment when he felt alive, unguarded, human. Elena had been a stranger, but her laughter, her quiet strength, had cut through his walls like nothing else. He'd meant to find her, had even driven by the hotel a few times, but life, deals, deadlines, his relentless climb, had pulled him away. He told himself she was just a moment, a fleeting spark, but now, holding this bracelet, he knows he was wrong. She was more, and he let her slip through his fingers. The door opens, and his assistant, Claire, steps in, hesitant. "Mr. Lancaster, I found what you asked for," she says, placing a thin folder on his desk. He'd called her after Elena left, demanding any information on the bakery's manager. He opens it, his hands unsteady, and sees her name, Elena Reyes. There's a photo, grainy but unmistakable, from a staff ID. Her address, her work history, a few sparse details about her life. But it's the last line that stops him cold, mother to Ethan Reyes, age 3, his breath catches, a sharp pain blooming in his chest. A child. She has a child. The thought lands like a blow, stirring a mix of emotions he can't untangle, jealousy, regret, and something deeper, something that feels like fear. He pushes the folder away, his mind racing. Could it be? The math checks out. 6 years ago, that night, the way they'd talked until dawn, the way she'd looked at him like he was more than his name. He remembers the hotel room, the rain outside, the way they'd fallen into each other, not out of lust but something softer, something real. He'd left before morning, a note with his number that he later realized he'd never given her a chance to use. He'd assumed she'd moved on, that she'd forgotten him. But what if she hadn't? What if Ethan? His hands clench, the bracelet digging into his palm. The idea is too big, too shattering, and he's not ready to face it. He stands, pacing to the window, the city sprawling below like a map of his victories. But tonight, it feels empty, a reminder of everything he's gained at the cost of everything he's lost. He thinks of Elena's eyes in the meeting, the way they'd flickered with something, fear, maybe, or recognition. She knew who he was, had known all along, and yet she'd said nothing. Why? Was she protecting herself? Protecting someone else? The questions burn, and he feels a surge of anger, not at her, but at himself, at the man he's become, so focused on power that he missed the one thing that might have mattered. Claire's voice breaks through. "Sir, there's something else," she says, handing him a small envelope. It was in the bakery's delivery records, addressed to you. He opens it, his heart pounding, and finds a single sheet of paper, handwritten in a careful script. It's from Elena, dated the day after the storm. Asterisk Mr. Lancaster, I'm sorry for the trouble. I only wanted to return what was yours. Thank you for your kindness. Elena, asterisk the words are simple, but they hit like a confession. She'd known, even then, and she'd still walked away. He crumples the note, his jaw tight, and Claire steps back, sensing the storm in him. He grabs his coat, the bracelet still in his hand, and heads for the elevator. He doesn't know where he's going, but he can't stay here, trapped in a room full of ghosts. The city is quiet as he drives, the fog curling around his car like a shroud. He finds himself outside the bakery, its windows dark, the sign reading closed a silent rebuke. He sits there, the engine idling, and lets the memories flood back, Elena's laugh, the way she teased him about his cuff button, the promise he'd made under that awning. "If you ever need me," he'd said, tying the bracelet, "I'll be there." But he wasn't. And now, she's built a life without him, a life with a child who might be his. His phone buzzes, a text from Claire, her address. If you need it, he stares at it, the weight of the decision pressing down. He could go to her, demand answers, but what would he say? What right does he have to disrupt her life after all these years? The fog thickens, blurring the streetlights, and he feels like he's drowning in it. "Elena," he whispers, the name a prayer, a curse, a plea. If she's the girl from that night, if Ethan is his, then everything he's built, his empire, his control, is a lie. He's not just a man who forgot a promise. He's a man who abandoned a family. The car feels too small, the air too thick. He steps out, the fog cold against his skin, and leans against the hood, the bracelet clenched in his fist. He doesn't know how to fix this, doesn't know if he can. But one thing is clear, he can't run from it anymore. Elena is the truth he's been avoiding, and whether she wants him or not, he has to face her. The city watches, silent, as he makes a choice, not as a billionaire, but as a man who's finally waking up. And somewhere, in a small apartment across town, Elena sleeps, unaware that the past is about to come knocking. The Chicago dawn is pale, a thin light breaking through the fog as Michael Lancaster stands outside Elena's apartment building. It's a modest place, the kind of brick walk-up that blends into the city's edges, far from the glass towers of his world. He's been here since the early hours, after leaving the bakery, the red cord bracelet burning a hole in his pocket. The folder Claire gave him, with its stark details about Elena and her son, Ethan, is tucked under his arm, a weight he can't ignore. He's replayed last night's realization 1,000 times. Elena, the girl from 6 years ago, the night they shared, the child who might be his. The truth is a blade, and it's cutting through every defense he's built. He hesitates at the door, his hand hovering over the buzzer. What is he even doing here? Demanding answers? Begging forgiveness? He's not sure, but the need to see her, to know, is stronger than his fear. He presses the buzzer, the sound sharp in the quiet morning. No answer. He tries again, then steps back, glancing up at the windows, half expecting to see her face. Nothing. He's about to leave when the door creaks open, and there she is, Elena, her hair mussed, a sweater thrown over pajamas, her eyes wide with shock. "Michael," she says, her voice a mix of disbelief and wariness. "What are you doing here?" He opens his mouth, but the words stick. She looks smaller here, in her own space, but no less fierce, her arms crossed like a shield. "I need to talk to you," he says finally, his voice rough. "Please." She hesitates, glancing back into the apartment, then steps outside, closing the door softly. "You shouldn't be here," she says, but there's no anger, just exhaustion, like she's been carrying this moment for years. He holds up the bracelet, and her face shifts, a flicker of pain crossing her features. "You left this," he says, and she looks away, her jaw tight. "It's just a bracelet," she murmurs, but they both know it's not. "Elena," he says, stepping closer, "I remember. The night at the hotel, the rain, the awning. I tied this on your wrist. I promised I'd come back." His voice cracks, and she flinches, like the words are a blow. "You didn't," she says quietly, her eyes meeting his, and the truth in them is a punch to his gut. "You didn't come back, Michael. And I waited. The weight of those years hangs between them, heavy and raw. He wants to explain, to tell her about the deals, the chaos, the life that swallowed him, but it feels hollow now, an excuse for a man who chose ambition over a promise. He pulls out the folder, his hands trembling. "I know about Ethan," he says, and her face goes pale, her breath hitching. Is he can't finish, the question too big, but she knows. Her eyes fill with tears, not of sadness but of something fiercer, like she's been guarding this secret so long it's part of her. "Don't," she says, her voice shaking. "Don't ask me that. You don't get to show up now and ask that." But he's too far gone, the need for truth overriding everything. "Elena, please. Is he mine?" The words hang in the air, sharp and desperate, and for a moment, she's silent, her hands clenched at her sides. Then she steps closer, her voice low, every word a wound. "6 years ago, I was a girl who believed in you. We spent one night together, one night where I thought you saw me. You left a note, a number, but it was wrong, Michael. A digit off, and I had no way to find you. I tried. I looked for you in every hotel, every headline, but you were gone. And then I found out I was pregnant." Her voice breaks, but she doesn't stop. "Ethan is mine. I raised him, alone, while you built your empire. So don't stand here now, with your folder and your guilt, and ask if he's yours." Michael feels the world tilt, his knees weak. He sees it now, the note he scribbled in haste, the number he must have miswritten, the girl he left behind. Ethan is his son, and the realization is a tidal wave, drowning him in regret. "I didn't know," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "I swear, Elena, I didn't know." She laughs, a bitter sound that cuts deeper than her words. "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't care enough to know." She turns, reaching for the door, but he grabs her wrist, gentle but desperate. "Please," he says, "don't walk away. Not yet." She pulls free, her eyes blazing. "You don't get to decide that anymore." But before she goes, she reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small photo, creased and worn. It's Ethan, smiling, his eyes unmistakably like Michael's. She presses it into his hand, her fingers trembling. "This is who I've been fighting for. Not you. Not us. Him." She steps back, tears streaming now, and the door closes, leaving Michael alone in the fog, the photo burning in his hand. He looks at it, at the boy's face, and feels something break inside him, a wall, a lie, the man he thought he was. He stumbles to his car, the city waking around him, indifferent to the wreckage of his heart. He sees it all now, the night they shared, the promises he broke, the life she built without him. Ethan, his son, a boy he's never met, who carries his eyes and her strength. The guilt is a living thing, clawing at him, and he doesn't know how to bear it. He drives, aimless, the photo on the seat beside him, Elena's words echoing, "You didn't care enough to know." He wants to fix it, to find her, to beg, but the door she closed feels final, a line drawn in a story he's only just beginning to understand. And yet, deep down, he knows this isn't the end. Not yet. Because the truth, now exposed, demands more than regret, it demands action, and he's not ready to let her go again. The Chicago night is silent, the city's pulse muted by a soft drizzle that streaks the windows of Michael Lancaster's penthouse. He sits alone in the dark, the only light coming from the city below, casting a cold glow across the room. The photo of Ethan lies on the table, its edges worn from hours of being held, studied, memorized. The boy's face, his son's face, is a mirror of his own, but softer, brighter, carrying Elena's resilience in the curve of his smile. Since their confrontation outside her apartment, Michael's world has unraveled. The empire he's built, the boardrooms he commands, the wealth that defines him, it all feels hollow, a fragile shell around a life he's only now seeing clearly. Elena's words burn in his chest, "You didn't care enough to know," they're true, and the truth is a weight he can't shake. He hasn't slept, hasn't eaten, hasn't gone to the office. His phone is off, his assistant's calls ignored. For the first time in years, Michael is still forced to face the man he's become. He thinks of Elena, of the girl she was 6 years ago, laughing under that awning, her eyes bright with a dream he dismissed as fleeting. He thinks of the woman she is now, fierce and unyielding, protecting a child he didn't know existed. And Ethan, his son, a boy who's grown up without a father, who might never know the sound of his voice. The thought is a knife, twisting deeper with every breath. He's lost them, not just once, but every day for 6 years, choosing ambition over a promise he didn't even realize he'd broken. He stands, moving to the window, the city sprawling below like a map of his mistakes. He remembers the note he left Elena, the wrong number scrawled in haste, a careless error that changed everything. He remembers the years that followed, the way he buried that night, convincing himself it was nothing, that she was nothing. But she wasn't. She was everything, and he sees it now, the way she'd made him feel seen, not as a Lancaster, but as Michael, a man capable of more than deals and power. He's spent years running from that feeling, building walls to keep it out, but Elena has shattered them, and he's left with nothing but the truth. The drizzle turns to rain, and Michael makes a decision. He can't undo the past, can't erase the years he wasn't there, but he can try to be something now, something better. He grabs his coat, the photo tucked into his pocket, and heads out, the city's hum of faint comfort. He drives to Elena's apartment, but the lights are off, the windows dark. He waits, the rain soaking through his jacket, but she doesn't come. Finally, he knocks on the neighbor's door, an older woman who eyes him warily. "She's gone," she says, her voice clipped. "Left yesterday, said she needed a fresh start." Michael's heart sinks, a fresh wave of panic rising. "Did she say where?" he asks, but the woman shakes her head, closing the door with a finality that feels like another loss. Back in his car, he sits, the rain drumming on the roof. He pulls out the photo, tracing Ethan's face, and feels a resolve settle in him. He's lost too much to give up now. He drives to the bakery, hoping for a clue, but it's closed, the staff unfamiliar with Elena's plans. He tries the diner where she used to work, the library she mentioned once, even the hotel from that night 6 years ago, each place a ghost of her presence. The city feels vast, indifferent, and he's never felt so small, a man chasing a woman who's always been one step ahead. Days pass, and Michael keeps searching, his life on hold. He cancels meetings, delegates deals, his empire running on autopilot. He's not the man he was a week ago, driven by control and conquest. Now, he's driven by something deeper, a need to make things right, not for absolution, but for Elena, for Ethan, for the family he didn't know he had. He visits the park near her apartment, remembering a story she told about taking Ethan there to watch the ducks. He sits on a bench, the photo in his hand, and lets himself imagine it, Elena's laughter, Ethan's small hand in hers, a life he could have been part of. The rain has stopped, the sky clearing to a fragile blue. Michael closes his eyes, her voice echoing in his mind, "I didn't leave because I hated you. I left because I couldn't hope anymore." Those words are his guide, his punishment, his promise. He doesn't know if she'll forgive him, doesn't know if she'll even want him in their lives. But he knows he can't stop trying. He's not searching for redemption, he's searching for them, for the chance to be more than a name, more than a mistake. He thinks of Ethan, of the boy's smile, and vows to find him, to show him a father who's flawed but fighting. As he drives back to his penthouse, the city feels different, less like a battlefield and more like a place where he might rebuild. The photo stays in his pocket, a reminder of what's at stake. He doesn't know where Elena is, doesn't know if she's watching him from a distance, weighing his worth. But he feels her, like a compass pulling him forward. "I'm sorry," he whispers, to her, to Ethan, to the man he could have been. The words are small, but they're a start, and for the first time, he believes they might lead him somewhere true. Somewhere, out there, Elena is living her life, and he's determined to find her, not as a billionaire, but as a man who's finally learned what matters. The Chicago winter has settled in, a soft blanket of snow dusting the city, softening its edges. It's been months since Michael stood outside Elena's empty apartment, the sting of her absence a wound that's only grown sharper. He's searched for her in every corner of the city, parks, diners, the bakery where her presence still lingers in the recipes she left behind. The photo of Ethan remains in his pocket, a constant reminder of the son he's never met, the woman he let slip away. Michael's life, once a relentless march of boardrooms and acquisitions, has quieted. He stepped back from Lancaster Corp, delegating to trusted advisors, his focus now on a single purpose, finding Elena and Ethan, not to claim them, but to earn a place in their lives, however small. It's a Sunday morning, the city waking slowly under the snow. Michael is at a community center in a neighborhood far from his penthouse, a place he's visited weekly since learning Elena once volunteered here, teaching kids to bake. He's not sure why he keeps coming, maybe it's the hope of a clue, maybe it's the chance to feel closer to her. Today, he's helping set up for a winter fair, carrying trays of cookies for the kids' booth, his expensive coat dusted with flour. The work is simple, grounding, a stark contrast to the life he used to lead. He's not the billionaire here, he's just Michael, a man trying to make things right. The fair is bustling, families laughing, kids darting through the crowd with mittened hands. Michael is stacking mugs for hot cocoa when he hears a laugh, a small, bright sound that stops him cold. He turns, his heart lurching, and sees a boy, maybe 3, chasing a snowball, his hazel eyes catching the light. Ethan. There's no mistaking him, not with that smile, those eyes that mirror his own. Michael's breath catches, the world narrowing to the boy's joyful run. And then he sees her, Elena, standing a few feet away, her coat wrapped tight, her face softer than he remembers, though her eyes carry the same quiet strength. She's watching Ethan, a faint smile on her lips, unaware of Michael's presence. He doesn't move, doesn't call out. He just watches, drinking in the sight of them. Ethan trips, tumbling into the snow, and Elena laughs, kneeling to brush him off. The tenderness in her movements, the way Ethan clings to her, is a glimpse of the life she's built without him. Michael feels a pang, not of jealousy, but of awe, of gratitude for her resilience. He's not sure he belongs here, not sure he has the right to step into this moment, but he can't look away. Ethan spots the cocoa booth and tugs Elena's hand, pulling her toward him. They're close now, close enough that Michael can see the faint scar above her brow, the one he noticed that night in the storm. Ethan reaches for a mug, his small voice asking for extra marshmallows, and Elena glances up, her eyes meeting Michael's. Time stops. Her smile fades, replaced by a flicker of shock, then something softer, recognition, maybe, or resignation. Michael, she says, her voice barely audible over the fair's hum, but it carries everything, surprise, caution, a question. He nods, his throat tight, unable to find words. Ethan looks up, curious, his gaze darting between them. "Who's that, Mama?" he asks, and Michael feels the weight of the moment, the fragility of what comes next. "Someone I know," Elena says, her voice steady but her eyes locked on Michael's, searching. He kneels to Ethan's level, his heart pounding. "Hey, buddy," he says, his voice rough. "I like your snowman." Ethan grins, pointing to a lumpy pile of snow nearby. "I made it," he says, and Michael smiles, the kind that hurts and heals at once. He looks at Elena, standing now, her arms crossed but her posture less guarded. "Can we talk?" he asks, and after a long moment, she nods, leading Ethan to a nearby bench, where he plays with a toy car, close enough to see but out of earshot. They sit, the snow falling softly around them. "I've been looking for you," Michael says, his voice low, raw. "Every day, Elena. I didn't know, about Ethan, about us. I'm so sorry." She looks away, her breath visible in the cold air. "I didn't leave to hurt you," she says. "I left because I couldn't keep hoping for something that wasn't there. Ethan needed me, and I had to be enough." Her words are a quiet blade, but there's no anger now, just truth. He nods, the photo in his pocket a silent witness. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he says, but I want to be here. For him. For you, if you'll let me. She doesn't answer right away, her eyes on Ethan, who's laughing as he stacks snow. He's my world, she says finally. If you're here, it has to be for him, not for some idea of what could have been. Michael nods, his chest tight. I know. I just want a chance to know him, to be whatever he needs. She looks at him then, really looks, and he sees it, a crack in her walls, a flicker of the girl who laughed with him 6 years ago. It's not going to be easy, she says, but there's a softness in her voice, a door opening just a sliver. Ethan runs over, holding out a snowball. For you, he says, handing it to Michael, who takes it, his eyes stinging. Thanks, buddy, he says, and Elena watches, her expression unreadable but not closed. She stands, brushing snow from her coat, and offers her hand to Ethan. Then, almost as an afterthought, she extends her other hand to Michael, a small, tentative gesture. He takes it, her fingers cold but steady, and for the first time, he feels it, a connection, fragile but real, a beginning. They walk together, Ethan between them, the snow falling like a promise of something new, something worth fighting for.